Your perceptive lens is attuned to be acclimated to a specific vibrational environment that is not conducive in the allowance of anything cosmic to enter that atmosphere that is controlled by a remote source. This is the reason why when you are presented with something that perplexes you, you are confused because you don't know how to respond, because you can't explain it. You haven't been trained to be aware of what exceeds that vibrational environment known as the system for a reason. That's why these things are deemed as inexplicable, anomalies, abnormalities, supernatural, esoteric. That's why they're deemed as cryptozoological and extraterrestrial, like these types of things. Science has a name for it. It's called pareidolia, a psychological phenomenon in which the mind makes sense of irregular shapes and patterns, meaning their science is telling you that even though you see it, it doesn't exist, because they don't want you to realize that there's anything outside that closed environment that they're controlling and operating. And your perceptive lens will only recognize what is inside that field of energy. Every element that exists inside that field of energy will only be recognized by your perceptive lens, because you have been trained only to recognize those elements that they control inside the vibrational environment that they control as the only reality there is. Anything that exceeds that is written off as illusionary or imaginary. That's why you don't believe in Sasquatch or extraterrestrials or anything, because you've been trained to. Mythological creatures, cryptozoological, paranormal, extraterrestrial. It's just, these are names. These are connotations that are affixed to these types of things to get you to not even pay attention to them. They don't want you to have a perceptive lens that is panoramic. They want you to have a perceptive lens that is tunnel vision, no peripheral vision. Just focusing on what we're telling you is the truth, and everything else that you see, you're not seeing. Everything else you're hearing, you're not hearing. Everything else that is presenting itself to you doesn't exist. Just focus on us. They don't want you to go outside that glass menagerie, that cage that they've got you locked inside. Because then if you do, you're leaving an area that they cannot control. So your perceptive lens is acclimated to a specific vibrational environment that is conducive to always remaining in control by a remote source. That's why when you see these things, you can't explain them, because you haven't been trained to identify them as anything that is real. I'm going to give you an example. When I say vibrational environment, you can also use dimensions. Let's say you right now are in the first dimension. Okay, you have a one-dimensional perceptive lens and a linear lateral mentality, a polarized mentality, an egocentric perceptive lens of duality, separatism, materialism, isolationism, idolatry. You get it. That's all that your perceptive lens is going to recognize and interpret as the only reality there is, because you operate in that extremely low frequency energy and vibrational environment of that field of energy that's being controlled by them. Okay, that's established. Now, let's say you have a kitchen table that's made of wood, and all of the grains of wood, they have different shapes and depictions and graphic designs and so on and so forth. Because you're one-dimensional, you're not even paying attention to it. It's not even a blip on your radar, right? Now, let's say fast forward 10 years or 5 years. Now, you're no longer one-dimensional, because now you've begun your spiritual journey, which, by the way, has nothing to do with their system. It's just a relationship between you and the everything of everything. That's what spirit is. But nonetheless, let's say that now you are no longer one-dimensional. Let's say now that you are getting to the elevated levels of nearly breaking the third-dimensional barrier. So that very same kitchen table only a few years ago that you completely were oblivious to, you now begin to see depictions, graphic designs and drawings, faces, shapes. And you're like, oh my God, how did I not see this long ago? Because your perceptive lens was a limited perceptive lens that was only allowing you to see inside that closed environment they control. When you alter your energy, the universe will concur, and your perceptive lens concurs as well, because now you're in a completely different vibrational environment. So now you're going to view things through your newly acquired persistence of vision that you were incapable of doing not too long ago. Now you're going to start to see shapes and faces and all of these things, all types of depictions. In the clouds, you'll see messages. In the trees, in the grass, all of nature, in the entire environment. You'll begin to study and assess and learn because the universe is attempting to send you messages by any means necessary, not just license plates and pennies and feathers and advertising billboards, on the sides of a building or something like that. It goes way beyond that. Divine synchronicities are not limited to the impediment of the physical condition. Absolutely not. Do you understand what I'm saying? So in other words, the more awareness that you're bringing to yourself, the more your perceptive lens is expanding, the more you're actually going to be able to view the panoramic cosmic spectrum of this infinite universe. But if you remain ensconced, thoroughly embedded in a one-dimensional mentality in a dimensional plane of unconsciousness, the only thing that you were trained to recognize is the material. That's what they control, their infrastructure, their system, their order, their governments, corporations, the matrix. That's what they own and operate. That's why when somebody says Sasquatch, oh, that doesn't exist. Oh, he doesn't exist. It's just nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense. It doesn't exist. Isn't that what they said about extraterrestrials 50 years ago? Now they're starting to finally admit to you that they exist now because the government says it. Then you're like, oh, I guess they exist now because the government says it. This has got to be indicative of where you are in your journey, that you can't think for yourself. They do your thinking for you. You think it just stops at your physical mind? They control every element of your life. In your perceptive lens is no different because reality is a matter of perception. How you perceive it to be is exactly how it is to you. So if you're perceiving this in a state of unconsciousness and unawareness and being told what reality is, that's what your perceptive lens will be governed by. I am robot. Oh, that is what this is. Okay, I've been programmed to only recognize this, but not that thing that's staring at me from the woods called Sasquatch because he doesn't exist. You have a 15-foot tall creature staring at you from the woods right there. And he doesn't exist because science says they don't exist. Anthropology says it doesn't exist. It's just funny. It's funny. Once you release all this garbage, that's when you actually give yourself the freedom that you need to disconnect and uncouple from the insanity and madness of that system that has been dictating to you what life is and what it isn't, what is permissible, what is impermissible, what is allowable, what is not allowable, what is socially acceptable, and what is unacceptable. That's why they say that's very off-putting and inappropriate. Don't refer to me by my God-given name that's on the birth certificate. You have to refer to me by pronouns and syllables, clicks and whistles. You see how crazy it's getting? But I'm just trying to say, I'm trying to impress upon you through the message I'm conveying in this video that your perceptive lens is acclimated to whatever specific vibrational environment you are currently an equivalent to. And this is conducive to what you're going to experience. So if you're in a high vibration, you're going to, of course, be an equivalent to a high vibrational environment. The more you ascend, the more your perceptive lens expands. What you really want to get to, if you want to say, the goal is to have disembodied vision. That means persistence of vision, like a floating invisible eye that sees everything in every direction simultaneously. Spherical consciousness, hemispherical consciousness, peripheral consciousness, and so on. So your perceptive lens has been programmed to only recognize that which has been deemed and construed by them as the only reality there is, solid objects, which are not solid at all. It's all an illusion. Anything that exceeds the limitations of that limited boundary is construed as imaginary, and you dismiss it, like extraterrestrials, Sasquatch, all of these things. So that is where you need to take yourself. As I've said before, their science is just that, their science. It has nothing whatsoever to do with what you call a universe. If you don't believe me, take your phone, go on Google, and type in, how old is modern science? The oldest science is astronomy. Only a few thousand years, I think 4,000, if that. Modern science, physics, quantum physics, all that stuff, I think it's probably maybe 3,000 years old, give or take. Now, if you extrapolate that information in juxtaposition to the age of the Earth, which is no age, of course, you can clearly see the discrepancies going on here, the monumentally unfathomable discrepancies. Because here you have a set system that's only about 3,000 years old that is unto its own very nature and its own virtue limited. Why? Because of the species that created it. The species that created that limited system didn't even exist. But they're telling you about something that they had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the creation of, because their species didn't exist. Do you see the lunacy in these things and why you continually subconsciously and unconsciously keep repressing, isolating, and compressing, strangling your unlimited transformative potential energy? You're not releasing it. You're not activating it. You're not awakening it. It's still dormant. They don't want you to pop that light switch on and turn that switch on, man, because then you're unstoppable. Then you're going to be like, whoa, why didn't I see this before? Your perceptive lens is going to go bang. You're going to be lit up. They don't want that. They just want you to stay in your car, drive to the job you can't stand, 9 to 5 grind, like a cadaver in a metal coffin, shuffling back and forth on the parkways and the throughways and the highways, being miserable like everybody else. When you get in your car today, I want you to do an experiment. I want you to drive around and, of course, be safe, but take a look at the drivers in the other cars, the ones coming on and next to you and everything. How many of them are smiling? Just you can see. Take a consensus of these things inside your mind, and then you take a literal census, you just take, you're tallying up, and just see for yourself where people are vibrationally speaking. You can clearly see what's going on. They are not naturally low vibrational. This is an unnatural, forced occurrence on you. Your natural state is divine. Nothing to do with books or mysticism or any of that stuff, man. I'm talking about cosmic alchemy, transformational alchemy. That's the straight truth. Once you start tapping into something other than their system, your perceptive lens is just going to dilate and unfurl, expand. Then you're going to be like, good God Almighty, how did I not see this before? Then you're not going to give yourself a zillion excuses why you're not going to go live your dreams, and you're going to give yourself those reasons why you're going to live your dreams. I did that to myself back in 2014 when I wanted to take the stage because I'm a musician. And my son and the guy who used to live next door to me, they were like, there's an open mic in a couple of towns over. We want you to come. And I was like, I can't do this. For 6 hours, I was providing myself with infinite amounts of excuses why I'm not going to take the stage. And I didn't give myself one single reason why I should. And then I analyzed that. I said, Jesus, God Almighty, I'm programmed for failure here, bro. Man, it was like, no. So I took that stage. I played a couple of songs and it changed my life forever. And I never looked back. And then I realized I had an amazing talent for it, that I had a beautiful energy that helped other people raise their vibration. That's what I realized, because I'm a spiritual healer, a psychic, a medium. I'm a divine conduit, starseed, light worker, and many other things. And so many others out there are. But I'm going to cut this video in saying that your perceptive lens is based on your training and your lack of awareness. Because you always refer to that default program you call your identity, that narrative of all the content that you have been implanted with, plus all the accumulated experiences of a quantitative nature with no value, useless information. So that's what you always refer to in the present moment. You can't exceed the limitations of that unless you learn something new. So they deliberately implanted this garbage, useless tools inside your head, because they know that's all you're going to refer to. That's your identity. That's the only point of reference you have as a source of information, knowledge, and awareness, which is non-existent. So your perceptive lens will be governed by that. It's like software engineers. They write operating systems and programs that govern the computer and tell it what to do. This is no different. I really hope you can see that. Your perceptive lens is acclimated to a specific vibrational environment that will only recognize the elements inside that vibrational environment as the only reality there is. And if that vibrational environment is in control by a remote source, you, my friend, are a robot. And you're only going to recognize money and the physical. That's why they always prey on your primitive base instincts. It's always, the first instinct is the instinct of survival, which is sex. Which is the instinct of eating and surviving, right? And the second one is procreation, which is sex. So therefore, you have survival, which you equate to having, being associated with money. Your survival is contingent on money. That's what they want you to think. And then procreation, of course. You're going to want to have sex with somebody you're attracted to. So those are the two things that they control you with. That's why their system is riddled with money and sex. That's why they say sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's a bunch of garbage. That's social programming right there. Because you are a product of what you've been shown and taught and told, you see. But if they would have shown you something different, told you something different, and taught you something entirely different, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd be off on your own, doing your own thing. You see. So that's what I'm trying to convey to you. Your perceptive lens is acclimated to a specific vibrational environment that you are an equivalent of in that moment, whatever that is. And 9 times out of 10, it's their system. That's why they control you with money and fear. And when you have any given spare time left, it's always sex and distractions. They got you coming and going, man. Allow this video to be the catalyst of your own awakening. That you need to realize within yourself that you're connected to something that's always going to cripple you, paralyze you, constrict you, compress you. It's all about contractions, not expansion. It's all about tension, not release. It's all about ebb, not flow. It's all about keeping you locked down, man, and blinding your eyes to the reality of the cosmic spectrum, the panoramic cosmic spectrum of God, Source. Unfortunately, the names God and Jesus and heaven are synonymous with religion. Unfortunately, that's the greatest tragedy. The truth is there are no names. But nonetheless, allow this video to be a testament to the awakening of your unlimited powers. Because I hope that this is a catalyst to allow that occurrence to actually transpire in your own reality. God bless.